Tree Country 1330 WTRE. It's 8:45 on this Thursday. It's Thursday already.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, right?
Amazing. These short weeks, they go by pretty fast.
I'm not going to say that I'm sad about it.
I'm grateful for so many things, and that's one of them.
That's right. Well, welcome in Decatur County Prosecutor Nate Harder with us this morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is an important part of what I'm able to do in the office, and grateful you guys allow me to do it. I
always enjoy, I love to see these statistics.
Yeah, well, I'm
not
glad
going to say
for
it's
that.
Heartwarming. That's not the right word. But it's a reassuring, I think, for me or any other person in this community that, there is action and there are things happening, whether good or bad, that we want it to be that way.
Right. I totally understand that. And, metrics can be kind of cold and, scientific sounding. And I understand they're not the same quality as a good heartwarming story. But I don't remember who it was that you can't measure, you can't improve what you don't measure. And so I think this is a good way for us to sort of be accountable each month for how things are going, and also to help us understand our own processes and to identify if there are any weak spots.
Your office very busy this summer. Interns are back in school?
Back in school. Young Scotland Reinhold concluded a fantastic summer with us, and got to see more than a lot of deputy prosecutors get to in the course of a summer. Just timed out that way. And so we were grateful for her time with us, and sad to see her go. She spent all summer, among other things, she took it upon herself to write down like a fact of the day and a quote of the day. We have this big whiteboard that everybody has to pass through the office, and today in history.
Really?
And on her way out the door, she got us gifts, which is not how that's supposed to work. She had acquired these two big hardbound books, hardcover books of facts of the day and today in history, so that we would not be without that while she was gone.
You will keep her tradition up.
Yes. So, Scotland, I don't imagine you're listening. I bet you're probably in a class right now, but we were grateful to have you, and we're thankful to her family for putting her on loan to us for the summer.
Yeah, enjoyed having her in when she was able to come with you, and you can tell she's very intrigued and interested in what she's studying.
It's been a fantastic recruitment tool to have interns. I haven't done a count recently, but we must be approaching 30 interns we've had over my 10 years. And the idea that some of those come home and practice, like Emily Shebler and Elizabeth Hostetler, practice with us and join the team is great. Others go on to practice elsewhere or go on to be mayor of the city, and that, because Josh Marsh actually interned with us back in the day during law school. To know that our interns are now launched out into a world of a career of purpose and a noble cause, being pillars of their community wherever it is they end up, it's tremendously enjoyable to have been part of that.
It's a good investment in the community.
I figure people gave me a hand up on the way, and that's a way I can help do that and potentially contribute to the human capital for Decatur County and southeastern Indiana, in the same way that we go after capital investments like factories or other kinds of jobs. If we can go after human capital, I think that's a good thing too.
Even better. Well, let's talk about child support today.
Yes, I'd like to very much, and I appreciate you giving me a forum to do that. August was a Child Support Awareness Month across the state of Indiana, and so everything turns green. That's the color for Child Support Awareness Month, and the whole office changed its decorations, and we have T-shirts. We made a point of having the Child Support Division at National Night Out, and the Criminal Division came along to help with that, and in order to raise the profile of the office, to help people understand what the Child Support Office can do in terms of establishing a paternity and saying, yes, this is the father of this child, and then getting a child support order established, making sure that people are paying on it, even paying on it if the child has aged out but there was an arrearage that can be paid towards. There are all these metrics that we keep track of and services that we offer that we wanted the public to know about, and my team just continues to excel. What I didn't realize was just how beyond exceptional the office is, and that goes for everybody that works in that office, but I really have to point towards Shelley Warfield, my chief of staff in the child support division, who has been there the longest and is the most veteran, and really has established how the office works in a way that it exceeds expectations. And I just can't find the words to say how proud I am of that team and the work that they do. For example, people have no idea how much child support we're actually collecting and making sure gets to the children. And it's over $200,000 a month.
Oh, wow.
That we are collecting. So over, like, right at $2.5 million a year that we're able to get from non-custodial parents into the hands of custodial parents for the benefit of their children. That is just an incredible amount of money. It's bills, it's groceries, it's school supplies, it's all sorts of things that these children need in order to live full, productive, and fruitful lives. Like I said earlier, you can't improve what you don't measure, and this is a federal program. The 4D office, or Child Support Office, comes from the Social Security Act, Title 4D. So it's a federal program, and every state does it a little bit differently. In Indiana, the Child Support Division is part of a prosecutor's office instead of a standalone family or social services kind of thing. What unites all of these programs is they're all measured on these certain metrics, like the rate of paternity establishment, the rate of collections, the rate of collections on arrearages. We have to keep track of all of that, and so does everybody in the country. What they do is they then measure how your office is performing against the federal average. Our office routinely does between 15 and 25% better than the federal average.
Oh, that's outstanding.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible that they're doing up to a quarter better in some of these metrics than their federal counterparts over the years. But we actually had a visitor from the state level Child Support Bureau who made a point to come down a scheduled time with us to explain just how much better these numbers are than what we think they are. Because we went a step further than that. It's not just that we're dramatically exceeding the federal average. Indiana also keeps track. It's I think they said in a top 5 state across the country in how we perform as a state. Within Indiana, we exceed the Indiana average by between 5 to 15% over and over and over again, year in and year out. Actually, it's even better than that. We routinely are in the top 5 for Indiana counties. So Indiana's in the top 5 in the country. We're routinely in the top 5 in the state. But wait, there's more. Even compared to ourselves, one of the things they're measuring is how quickly we are able to exceed previous years. So last year, we were in the top 5 in the country. We're doing better this year than last year, and last year was better than the year before that. Somehow, the system that Shelley Warfield and everybody else in the office are working, it continues to improve. Even at these high levels, they are not satisfied with the way things have been and the level of excellence they had. They continue to improve by huge percentages. It's really shocking how good those numbers are. What taxpayers may be excited to know about, especially local county taxpayers, is that the Child Support Division is run on a reimbursement schedule. So the state, through these federal dollars, reimburses the local office 2/3 of every dollar that we spend running the office. And so, I should have known this number before I walked in. The total cost of running the office would be, it's 1/3. So instead of costing, $200,000, let's say it's $180,000, make the math easy, it would only cost the taxpayer $60,000 to run that office. And I'm talking about all in dollars, pens, paper, computers, salaries, benefits, the whole 9 yards. We are running for a fractional share of what you would expect that office to run. And to the return on investment for taxpayers is just stratospheric. The work that they're doing, the fact that it's reimbursed, it's pennies on the dollar how valuable my teammates in the child support division are and the work they're doing on behalf of Decatur County.
And, I think, like, just hearing the federal reimbursement, and then you couple that with the fact that the kids in this county are in turn benefiting, it makes the whole package just that much better.
And that reflects what I constantly hear out of my team. This work, it's not easy work. You have to imagine that when they're interacting with the folks who aren't paying in particular, those folks don't want to pay. Not all of them. Obviously, there's a huge number of people who are ordered to pay. They're happy to pay for their children, and they're just going through the system. But a lot of our job is going to find the folks who won't pay and getting them to try to pay. And when they don't want to pay, or they're having a hard time making their own ends meet, it can be very emotional, very stressful. And that frequently spills out at the nameless government bureaucrat on our end, forgetting that these are real-life human beings on my team. And part of what my team is mastering is being human to these other human beings and forming relationships with them where they know and they work together and they try to make things happen together. And that really hard work, this is not just filing paperwork and working on a computer and data entry. These are real struggles with real human beings. But what I have heard over and over and over again is that this is all about the kids. This is all about the kids. And that mantra is part of what I've heard my team say gets them through those very tough interactions.
I think, too, when you look at that, and trying to phrase this correctly, but people may think as your office, well, it's me. They want me to pay this money. But again, if it's proven it's your child, but it's also to care for that child. It's not, this money is with intent and purpose. And we all know the world has gotten crazily expensive.
That's true. That is absolutely true. Yeah, we are not intending to be punitive. This is not about retribution or punishing you for having kids or for breaking up with your significant other. That's not what we're doing. We're just trying to make sure that child has what they need to survive and to be purposeful, happy, and flourishing. And that can be really, really tough. Now, that's not to say we don't get punitive. Let my criminal hat come out here for a second. For people who simply refuse to do what they are supposed to do, what we as a society have decided parents ought to do to take care of their children, it is possible to come over to the criminal side and face sanctions. And we do have people who go to prison because they just thumbed their nose at the system and said, I'm not doing it and you can't make me. That is a very rare number of times compared to the vast majority of folks who pay and pay willingly or pay begrudgingly and we have to work with them. To the people who just say, I'm not doing it and you can't make me, we frequently remind that we can.
And I don't know the answer to this, so I'm sure someone else wonders, but say I'm paying my child support and I lose my job, and so I've fallen on hard times. Is it better to call that office and say, what can we do? Is that a possibility?
100%. I can hear my teammates in my ear saying, please tell them yes. Communication is key. And obviously we understand as an office that these things happen. We actually, over the years, have had connections to workforce development folks who might be able to help you get on your feet. It is possible to modify child support orders, and we can evaluate whether that's appropriate or not. And we would 1,000 times prefer to talk about it than to just let it go ignored and let the arrearage start to pile up. And then you're under even more stress at that point as you're getting notices from us. Or one of the common things is the office sometimes will suspend people's driver's licenses if they aren't paying their child support. The last thing we want is someone who's down on their luck and out of a job, then finds out their driver's license is suspended because they won't talk to us. And so, yes, if you can call into my team and be respectful and say, here's what I've got, what can you help me with, my team will work with you. I'm not saying we will always figure it out, but boy, most of the time it seems like they do.
Communication, right?
100%. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great question.
Well, kudos to your team, though. That's outstanding numbers. And
I couldn't be more proud of them, and I happen to know a couple of them have the radio on in their office, and I hope you guys know how much I love you and I appreciate you, and we're going to do everything we can to spread the good word about the work that they're doing.
Very good. Let's talk about cases. You're always comparing.
Yes.
Statistics are good.
I think so. So your listeners have heard over the years, we've talked about the trend lines and filings. We so far have filed 753 cases as of the end of August, and we're on pace, given that, to file around 1,117, which is about what we predicted the last time I was in here, was around 1,100, 1,110. So we're holding pretty steady through August. We filed 89 and we closed 72. That's a little bit further apart than I'd like. I would rather that we close more. Not in raw numbers. I don't really care like how many we close. But if we're filing 89, I'd like us to be as close as possible to resolving 89 so that the system doesn't get backlogged.
Trying to make it a wash across
the board. That's
the
goal, is to try to not cancel those out, but the other question is, if we had several months like this in a row, I might want to look at our system and say, why? Why are we closing fewer cases? Is there a scheduling issue? Is there a communications with victims issue? Is there a personalities issue where we're just not getting along with defense counsel and so things are getting pushed out towards trials? Is it a combination of those things? So I'm going to keep an eye on this because that's not a huge gap, but it's enough of a gap that it makes me sort of go,
From month to month,
it could pile up on us, and I'd like to avoid that if at all possible. We've been pretty efficient, and that's just starting to approach the kind of gap that gives me a little bit of pause.
Okay. The jail population?
Yeah, we're down a little bit from the last time I was here. Last time it was around 133. Last night when I was checking this, it was 125. I don't know what kind of night the law enforcement had out there. It could be higher this morning than it was when I last checked. One of the metrics I always keep in here is how many do we have housed out of county that we're paying for. And for years now, since the opening of the new jail, that number's been low. The reason I keep track of it is because I remember before we had the old jail when that number was in the 30s, and we were paying huge numbers of dollars every day to house these folks out of county. And so I like to draw that contrast every chance I get to say one of the ways we're paying for this jail is saving money on housing those inmates elsewhere. And it's that's small numbers, but they do add up over time when you add day after day after day. Similarly, we have approximately 28, if I'm reading the jailed list correctly, approximately 28 folks that have been sentenced and are awaiting pickup from the Department of Correction to come get them. And they're paying us, they're being reimbursed close to $60 a day per prisoner, per head, per night.
Okay.
What they pay us is approximately $35 a day, per head. That sounds like I'm talking about cattle. Good Lord. Per person, okay. Obviously. Yeah. And I'm thinking heads in beds, and I meant no offense. But anyway, the idea is we worry that the Department of Corrections is trying to save money on the backs of our local folks. And we have the space, we have the capacity, but it is a strain on our budget, on our food budget, on our detention deputies. That is unnecessary because they've been sentenced to the Department of Corrections. Let's go. Also, if you're an inmate, you're losing out on credit time, you're missing out on programming, you're not getting started in your recovery plans that the Department of Correction can put in there, case management and so on. You're just kind of sitting.
You're in holding.
Right. And I don't think that's fair to the inmates either. It's not great for local governments. It's not great for inmates. And I hate to accuse the Department of Corrections of anything, but it seems like they're the main ones benefiting. And across the state, we'd like to say just come get the inmates that have been sentenced to your facilities.
And I know we've kind of talked about that before. Do you feel like that number in holding, has that improved at all? Because it was kind of bottlenecking, you thought, there for a minute.
You're right. It could be that there's a very good reason for this that we're not accounting for, such as the bottleneck at the Regional Diagnostic Center, or RDC, which is where they process new inmates. And that's still a plausible explanation.
They've had time to correct that.
They've had some time, and I don't know if I don't know if the fix is internal. I don't know enough about the operations at the Department of Correction, and so I should be careful not to say things that I don't know enough about. But I would have hoped that could have been addressed by now. I don't think they could have opened up a new facility or transitioned one of their other facilities into a regional diagnostic center like RDC. I think that probably would take years to transform one of their facilities. But to make RDC more efficient, I mean, we're talking about a year now of this trend line, maybe longer. And I would have liked to have seen them figure some of that out by now. And you're asking about the numbers. I don't see a dramatic improvement yet. I see more of the same of what we've been dealing with.
I'm going to bounce back to you for a minute. When we talk about the ones housed out of county, and there's not many at this point that are housed out of county, specific reasons that they're not in our facility?
I couldn't speak to these two, but in general, there are a couple of reasons. One is really unlikely. It could be sort of a Hatfield and McCoy thing, where it's just certain families and people don't get along and you don't have the space to house them separately. That's pretty rare now that we have the space that we have in our facility, but it was more common back in the day. If you don't have the space, that's a good reason to do it. That was our old reason for doing that so often. Now it tends to be more like they're at the Department of Corrections for psychological evaluation or competency evaluation. And another possibility sometimes would be that they are that they have cases in multiple counties, and so they're bouncing from county to county trying to figure out their cases. The last one I can think of is if the person can't safely be housed because they are. The place we've seen it most recently was with Sheriff Jamie Knoll out of Clark County. He was the sheriff and was accused of crimes and ultimately convicted of crimes. It did not make sense for the sheriff to be placed into the jail he had just been running, and where the inmates knew exactly who he was and might have retaliated against him. And so he was housed in another county on behalf of Clark County. Obviously, that doesn't come up in a place like this very often.
Okay. You have had some resolutions.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight a couple of the larger ones. We recently had a gentleman named Josvanis Leon. He was traveling through the state, had a firearm. And the problem with him having a firearm, that's fine, that's legal. The problem for him was that he's a felon and had a recent felony conviction. And so that made it a level 5 felony for him to have the handgun that he had. On top of that, he was what we call an habitual offender. So he had at least 3 prior felonies from other jurisdictions. And when we stacked all of those together, that created that additional habitual offender status for him. Ultimately, we resolved his case for 4 years in prison. That's a little bit on the low end of the scale of what's possible, but it mattered to me that he was simply driving through the community. He wasn't using the firearm. He wasn't being violent. He wasn't. That would have been aggravating to his sentence. It would have made my offer much higher than what it was. So that's but still, 4 years in prison is nothing to sneeze at. It's not something any of us out here in the rest of the world, in the free world, want to do. And so that was a resolution I wanted to highlight. He is going to go to prison. He's not allowed to have firearms because he's a prior felon.
And does it matter on the level of felony if you can carry a gun again, or is it if you're a convicted felon that takes that right away?
So a person who has been convicted of a felony of any kind in the last 15 years may not possess a firearm. There is a process for going back to a judge and specifically petitioning to have your firearms rights restored. That is exceptionally rare that it happens, but there are some lawyers who specialize in that. There's a guy out of Carmel who that's what he does. He helps people get their firearms rights restored. But generally speaking, under the law, if you have a felony in the last 15 years, it's a level 5 felony for you to possess a handgun of any kind. And it doesn't matter whether it's a level 6 felony all the way up through murder. Any felony puts you in that position.
Okay.
We did have a jury trial this month, during August, that Elizabeth Lecker-Hostetler did. She tried the case of State of Indiana versus Ashley Carter. That was a search case. Ms. Carter was on probation, and the probation officers were there to do a search. And while they were searching, they found a bunch of methamphetamine, and, well, a quantity of methamphetamine anyway. And we sent it off to the lab, had it tested to see that that's what it was. And then we charged her with possession of methamphetamine, and that was what the jury had to sit and listen to, was that. Ultimately, they decided that it was her methamphetamine and convicted her of that. So we were grateful for the jury's service and also grateful for the verdict. And just very proud of Elizabeth Lecker-Hostetler for getting out there in the jury trial world and saying sometimes we need to fight over these cases, and that's okay, and securing the win for the law enforcement side of things.
Reduces a little more of those drugs off of the street. So.
Yes, absolutely. And also it's important that people know that when folks are placed on probation, they are being watched, they are being monitored, and there is accountability. We're not just releasing these folks into the community. And if you break those rules, you're going to be held accountable for that. So that was an important one for me to highlight because of that. The last one that I have on here is a case, State of Indiana versus Justin Myers. Mr. Myers was a contractor, and he ordered some products that he needed for his construction business and paid with a check that bounced tens of thousands of dollars. This is not like going to Home Depot and getting some 2x4s. Almost not quite $100,000. And he, after being confronted about that, tried to make another payment. That also didn't go through. That's fraud. If you make transactions, if you write checks knowing that they're not going to cash, that they're not going to go through, that's a crime. And the business owner that had sold him the materials was out tens of thousands of dollars worth of material. So over the course of a very long case, Mr. Myers was able to get out of jail. He didn't sit the whole time. He was able to go back out into the world. And by the end of the case, he had not made any restitution. He had not made the defendant or the victim whole. And ultimately, his sentence is going to be 2.5 years, with 1.5 of those behind bars, and then 1 year of probation with a condition of making the victim whole, or that time could be revoked. And so that case I thought was important to say we take seriously victim crimes, and even when those crimes are committed against small businesses who have revenue stream, it's still harmful.
It still hurts the business.
It hurts the business, and that hurts people. It's not just a business. There are real people behind those businesses. And so I wanted to highlight to the community that was one where we did get some jail time, and we also expect that there's going to be some restitution to help make that victim whole.
Very good. You guys have been quite busy. That is for sure.
We have been. And I tell you what, my last thing here is we are not the only ones that are busy across the state of Indiana. We are 450 attorneys short in prosecutors' offices. That's just prosecutors' offices. We're way short of attorneys across the state for how many we need to handle all the cases and litigation that come up, and trusts and estates and so on. But just in prosecutors' offices, we're 450 attorneys short. We engaged in a full-out offensive with the legislature to try to get some help for local governments to finance those offices. We made a lot of progress during the legislative session towards that progress. And just at the last minute, there was a financial revenue forecast that suggested the state wasn't going to have the money they thought they were. And at that time, they made some hard decisions. Among those hard decisions was to not fund prosecutors' offices with state tax dollars to help the locals out. That's unfortunate. We're going to revisit that in the future and hope that the financial picture of the state improves. In the meantime, we're very grateful to the county council for their hard work on the budget, and I'm happy to report we were able to reduce this year's budget in the prosecutor's office by 3% from last year's number, all while still giving raises and not cutting any positions or services. So I feel a little bit like a wizard for getting that done. That's not an easy task. It's not something we're going to be able to repeat year after year, but to be able to do it this year and to sort of share in what the rest of government is going through, we understood and we were, in a way, proud to be able to contribute.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's something about the financial picture for taxpayers.
All right. Well, thanks so much for being in with us this morning. We appreciate it and all the updates.
Thank you for having me in. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you next time. It's Tree Country 1330 WTRE.